We are at the Ono Academic College, Israel, during the Conference of Traditional Knowledge and Access to Knowledge, Access to Medicine. I'm very, very happy to present Professor Sheila Foster, the Vice Dean of Fordham Law School, came all the way from New York. Sheila, why did you choose academic career instead of like being a lawyer?
Well, I did practice for 2 years at a big law firm, but I quickly realized that that wasn't the path for me. And a professor of mine coaxed me out of that by saying, you know, you would be a great academic. And it turned out that I liked the world of ideas. I found practice was could be a little tedious from time to time. And so being in academia gave me the chance to think about the larger questions that you don't have time to think about as a practitioner.
Okay. You're very famous in the field of environmental justice. Can you explain what is environmental justice?
Sure. Environmental justice is the idea that our environmental laws don't always produce a fair situation, a fair outcome. And so what we look at is the way in which different populations, the poor, for instance, the minorities, tend to live with more pollution than people with more money and people who are not ethnic minorities. And that is what we call an environmental injustice, and the field of environmental justice tries to look at ways, legal solutions and policy solutions to create a fairer distribution of environmental harms and benefits.
I see. Can you give us an example?
So the classic example of environmental injustice in the United States is that African American poor in the United States tend to live closer to hazardous waste facilities than any other population in the country. So that is sort of the classic case. They tend to live near waste, landfills, and air pollution. Another example that's more recent is Hurricane Katrina. Many people would say that what happened in New Orleans was an example of environmental injustice because of the ways that historically the land use laws, the zoning laws were enforced, left a population of the poor and a minority living in lower lying, more polluted areas, and those were the areas that were vulnerable to flooding. When we had a hurricane like Katrina and the levees broke. So if you recall, the flooding didn't result from the hurricane itself, but from the water that it produced and the levees that were supposed to protect the city from flooding. And there's a saying in New Orleans that money flows away, water flows away from money. So the richer people tend to live in the higher areas and the poorer in the lower ones. And so therefore, the environment as a place where we live and as a place where people work and play is how we define it. Those areas that house poor people and ethnic minority were environmentally more vulnerable.
Okay, and what can be done to make kind of reproducive justice in this case?
Well, we can change policies. So President Bill Clinton in 1994 signed a federal executive order on environmental justice. And that order directed every federal department or agency to make sure that none of its policies have a disproportionately negative impact on poor and minority populations. And that type of policy has had a very positive effect, particularly at the main environmental protection agency, the federal EPA, where the federal EPA has taken steps so that air pollution permits are not given out as much in poor or minority communities. So that's one, I think, major policy shift that we've seen over the past 20 years.
Okay, and what is the interconnection between environmental justice and traditional knowledge? Because it seems like two separate fields, but it has interconnection.
Well, one of the things that environmental justice and traditional knowledge have in common is the idea that there is a community and that the community holds resources or has its own resources. And one of the really unique aspects of this movement that we call environmental justice is that it's been a grassroots-based movement. It's come from the idea that there is an injustice here has been raised by the communities themselves. They've pointed to the ways in which they have to live with pollution, and also the resources that they've had to fight back against that pollution, whether it's sort of grassroots efforts or protests, or whether it's their own cultural and social resources that they have. So I think both sort of depend on this notion of a community or a specific group. And that's at a very sort of tenuous level, but there is that connection, is that it's very much focused on a social group, let's say, be it the indigenous or, in our case, poor minority communities.
Okay, so I think we can learn from environmental justice to deal with traditional knowledge, but do you think, like, after spending a day and in the conference, do you think you can take things from traditional knowledge process of trying to solve the same kind of problems into environmental justice?
I actually learned a lot today about, number one, what is traditional knowledge? I didn't know what that term meant. But number two, some of the problems that we talked about today as lawyers, as scholars, how to approach problems of traditional knowledge, reminded me of the environmental justice field in the sense that it's very hard to solve these problems legally. That the current laws we have, for us it's environmental law, in the traditional knowledge field it's current intellectual property laws or regimes are inadequate to really get at the problem. And so it takes creative thinking, it takes thinking outside the box, and sometimes it takes thinking outside of the legal regime that you're working in. So for environmental justice, we had to look to civil rights laws, not necessarily environmental laws. Environmental laws turn out to be the problem, right? Not the solution. It may be with traditional knowledge that intellectual property laws, the way we think about property rights or intellectual property rights, may in fact be the problem, and that you have to look to another way of thinking, another regime to solve the problem. So I think they're very connected in that way, and the conference today really reminded me of how difficult these problems can be.
Are there any international treaties dealing with environmental justice? Like is it the WHO who is responsible for this field?
There are no international treaties that deal with environmental justice per se. There are plenty of international treaties that focus on environmental protection, but none that focus specifically on environmental justice. You could piece together a number of different treaties, some that focus on environmental protection, some that focus on the rights of minorities, some that focus on the right to health, and piece them together to come up with some protection for these communities. But there's no one treaty that addresses this particular problem. In fact, the concept of environmental justice doesn't really extend very far, I think, outside of the United States and maybe Brazil and South Africa. When you go across the world, you don't hear that concept a lot. And one of the things that many of us have worked on is how we think about environmental justice in an international context. Mm-hmm. Because it's been so focused on racial minorities in the US and in countries that have racial minorities. When you go to countries that may not be socially, that may not have that specific problem of race, but may have other problems of class or indigenous status, the term hasn't always translated well.
Okay, we are very happy that you came all over from the Fordham University to visit us at an academic college. We have ongoing relationship between the two institutes as we come once a year to a summer seminar at Fordham University, and we are very happy that you had a chance to enjoy our academic environment. It's
my pleasure. In fact, I feel very privileged to have been invited. It's my first time to Israel. Having a great time.